Hey, greatness. Welcome back to our conversation. I'm Sister Mathina. I'm the founder here at Nisa Nova. And our conversation today is about integrity. It's one of the most integral components of our method regarding community building and safe, successful sisterhood. And so when we talk about integrity, integrity to us is what happens when your values stop being inspirational and start being structural. Integrity is your values being so real that they can hold weight. Your values should be real. And if your values are real, they should be able to hold weight. Before we go any further, I want to invite you to drop one value that you refuse to negotiate in the comments, okay? DM me if you need to. And it could be whatever your value is. It could be sisterhood. It could be peace. It could be faith. It could be honesty, respect, integrity. Whatever that value is, drop it somewhere, okay? Drop it in the comments. I would love to see what that value is and how it shows up for you. Now, let's define integrity really cleanly. And for us, integrity is your values plus alignment plus follow through. Values, alignment, follow through. That is what equals integrity. Because integrity is when your private yes matches your public yes. It's when your values become your decision filter, your boundaries, your standards. It becomes your blueprint. And if we look at blueprint, I want you to think about a house, right? Think about a house or home, any building structure. If you look at yourself, if you look at the community you're building as a structure like a home, then values aren't the core, they are the load bearing beams. Without them, everything crumbles. So values become the blueprint when they show up in what you allow, in what you address, in what you repeat, even and especially in what you refuse. I recently went down a whole rabbit hole because I learned about something called a black diamond apple. Okay. And we love fresh fruits in my house, and particularly apples. And so when I learned about it and I looked it up, and I learned that this apple, one apple can cost you anywhere between $10 and $20, maybe even more. Okay. And so it made me look deeply into what is this black diamond apple. And what I learned about this apple, it messed me up in the best way possible because there was a whole integrity lesson in it. Okay, let me give you a little bit of information, right? The black diamond apple is grown in Tibet and is grown at very high altitudes. And so as a result of the environment, so they get really strong UV light exposure, and they have big temperature swings between their day and their night at this high altitude. And what results is this skin on the apple that's so deep purple, it's near black. And this apple is considered a luxury, partly because it's hard to grow and can take years for the trees to even mature enough to produce fruit. And so it's priced as premium fruit. Now here's what sits in my being, okay? The apple and the color didn't come from a paintbrush. It came from conditions. Now, those of you who like, it came from God's paintbrush. All right, you get what I'm saying, okay? And so you think about the apple and that skin color and that richness. It comes from conditions. And integrity is what happens when our values aren't just words, they become the conditions that you live in. You can't mass produce a black diamond apple, and you can't mass produce a community with integrity. It is grown slowly, intentionally, through standards, through choices, and consistency. You with me? If you with me, drop comment in the chat. And so I like to, when I looked at this, I was like, okay, how can we summarize this? And so I summarized this in three kind of analogies or conditions, right? And the first one is this: conditions create character. There's so many examples, but let's just, okay. The apple becomes what it becomes because of the conditions it's exposed to. And your values create conditions inside your life and certainly inside any community that you're building. Number two, time reveals what's real. What do I mean by that? Some things take years to mature. There are examples all around us. If you take a look, for example, at an oak tree, takes years to mature. And olive trees, bamboo, years to mature. Bamboo grows underground for years before it sprouts, right? If you take a look there, did you know that there are animals, like there's a shark that doesn't mature enough to be able to reproduce itself until it's like 150 years old? You heard me. You heard me, friend. Since I'm 150 years for this shark to be mature enough to reproduce itself. Elephants, not only are they pregnant for 2 years, they can't reproduce themselves until they're between 18 to 20 years old. I said what I said. It ain't me. Argue with the science. What that means, time reveals what's real. Some things take years to mature. And integrity is built by repeated decisions, not one motivational moment. It's about the condition, the culture, the decisions that we make that build a community. And our third one here is rarity comes from standards. That apple is premium because it's not easy to replicate. And healthy sisterhood is rare when we don't protect it with standards. What I would love to see is healthy sisterhood no longer becoming a rarity, but becoming the standard itself because it's protected by standards. And in Nisa Nova, we don't want to build performative spaces. We build protected spaces. So all of our staff, all of our volunteers are trained on the culture that we're building, on how we respond, on how we, okay, I'm gonna give y'all the blueprint in a minute. But here's one thing I want you to lock into, okay? Sisterhood without integrity becomes chaos with cute branding. That is no longer going to be the standard by which we move through life, and certainly not in our sisterhood and not in the communities that we build and curate. Okay, so let's talk about four things. I said that values are the blueprint. Your integrity is exactly what we need. And so I'm gonna always give y'all a little something, a little framework, a little something to work with, okay? So here we go. There are four blueprint builders that we're going to use in this conversation to talk through integrity and value systems and how they feed culture, okay? The first one is boundaries. Defining what's allowed and not allowed. Are you going to think of every single boundary on day one? No, we've already identified that it takes time. But the reality is that once something happens, you then have to step in and define it as a boundary or something that's allowable in your community, in your space. I remember, for example, in one of the communities that I was building years and years ago, we had a situation where we had a team member pass out. And of course, it was unexpected. Yes, we rallied around. There was prayer and a nurse called all within 2.5 seconds. However, that then sets up now that we have a structure that we ensure that we have medical professionals on team, that we train the staff in the team on check-ins when they're required to take breaks, etc. You have to define the boundaries. That is one of the key components to the blueprint. What you allow and don't allow. That's one example, and there are others, right? Second, language. All culture has particular language, right? Things, phrases, sayings that fit the community. Again, language develops in culture and community over time. But there's certain things that you may step into a community that you're curating with. And so you want to be able to say what you say here and what you don't say. Right? For example, my team knows that you don't say to somebody when you're in a volunteer and service mode, you don't say to a client, you don't say to any of our yes attendees, right? Our guests, you don't say that to the sister, no, oh, I don't know. Instead, we say, thank you for that question. Let me come back to you with an answer. Can I get back to you in 10 minutes? Can I get back to you in 15? Whatever is most realistic. You don't just say no or I don't know or shut them down. You offer them a gateway to a solution. Right? So, language, what we say and what we don't say. And it's also things that can be fun. So, I love a good clapper, okay? I love a good clapper. And so our community developed this concept of, okay, this is a clapper moment. Where's the clappers at whenever something of celebration actually occurs? What is that for you? So that's language and practice. What do we do consistently? What does that look like? Clapper moments. What does accountability look like for your community? What does a check-in, care? What are those things, those practices, those behaviors that become how you do things around here? Last one that we're going to talk about today. Are y'all loving this? Are you loving this? Drop a comment in the chat. Let me know. Invite a sister friends to the conversation. And I would love to hear from you all what's resonating. Okay. All right. So number 4 is about repair. Baby. And this is the one that I struggle with for years when I was building community, because a part of me at one point was very non-confrontational. And I wanted to find the best pattern. But sometimes, hear me, sis, the best way is to be clear, because clear is kind. And so I had to develop the muscle. And again, one of the things that happened with me is I was young when I started. I hosted my first women's conference that welcomed 100 women when I was 21 years old. Baby, I didn't know what I was doing. So I had this conversation in my mind, in the back of my head, about what I wasn't able necessarily to do because I was too young or I wasn't sure, I didn't know. When the reality is that I believe I was prepared because I was called. I wasn't called because I was prepared. And so one of the things that I intentionally teach this to my clients and my community of tribe builders as they build their own spaces, you have to also address what repair looks like in your community. What happens when harm has happened? When there's conflict or a rupture, how do you get back to restoration? So that is critical. All right, so I gave you 4 blueprint builders, okay? And that is boundaries, language, practices, and repair. Those are absolutely critical. Okay. Here's what I want to bring us back to. At the beginning of this conversation, one of the things I asked you to do was to pick a value, choose a value that is non-negotiable for you, something that you stand on, something that could be a pillar. What I want to know from you now is the value that you picked earlier in our conversation. Tell me what boundary would protect it. What boundary would protect the value that you selected? Now, let's give some examples. If the value is peace, maybe your boundary is, I don't stay in conversations that require me to betray myself. If your value is excellence, we don't commit to what we can't sustain. If your value is sisterhood, we address harm directly. We don't build community on whispers. We build it on wisdom. Y'all with me? Drop them in the comments. I would love to know what's showing up for you. Okay? So here's the piece that I want to go ahead and close this out on. If this conversation was of value to you and you want to go from looking at values as a blueprint to community creation that transforms, I would love for you to join us at the event that we're hosting on January 22nd. It's called From Gathering to Gateway, because a gathering is never just a moment. It's a blueprint to motion. And you want to actually curate an opportunity for people to experience you beyond that moment and event. So join us on January 22nd at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time, for our conversation, from gathering to gateway. And that is a conversation with our women who are building communities. And don't worry, it is complimentary. Okay. So you can join us. There won't be a replay. Let's be clear. So if you want this, you have to be in the room. You have to be there live. Okay. My promise to you is that we're going to talk about how to curate community with integrity, how to build spaces that hold people, that protect people, and that actually transform people. And so come with your questions. And I want you to come ready to not just talk about hosting events. This is not for you if that's what you're like, I just want to learn how to host events. This ain't going to be the one for you, for real, to be honest. Rather, this is about building those gateways. So go ahead and register. I made sure I dropped the link to registration in the description, and you'll have an opportunity to come with us. So as we close, I want you to choose one value and turn it into a standard. Then practice it for 7 days. Choose one value, turn it into a standard, practice it for 7 days. Come back and let us know. And I want you to comment, my value is, my standard is. Okay. So when your values become the blueprint, your life stops feeling random and your community stops feeling fragile. It feels intentional and it feels like freedom. Take care of yourself. I love you to pieces and back whole again. And we'll talk again real soon.